Welcome to this meeting of Council. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of this recording. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the original custodians of these lands. The people of the rivers and the hills have walked these lands for thousands of years, as well as today, and we pay respect to the elders of the past, present, and emerging. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Do we have any apologies or leave of absence? None. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest? No. We'll move now to open forum. Tonight we have two sets of questions. I'll just check that they're both in the gallery. Neil Higgins and Leonie Williams. Neil, I'll read your three questions first. PP 220008, with the 213 Lower 9 Mile Road property being incorporated into the Indigo Shire Stanley Planning Scheme settlement area and situated to the north, south, east and west of other properties within the scheme, what is Council's outlook when addressing isolated planning applications for these types of situations that fall within the boundary of the Stanley Planning Scheme when they can't be added to adjoining agricultural land? CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I note a couple of things? First of all, that there are three questions from Neil Higgins in relation to a planning permit consideration that's before Council tonight and is elsewhere on this agenda. I can also flag that there's another series of three questions from Leonie Williams also in the crowd today, with another three questions that all relate to an application that's on the agenda to be considered by Council later. Can I foreshadow that to Council that when we get to that agenda item, which is 11.5, that 11.5, can I just foreshadow with Council is that the officer's recommendation will be that Council defers that item. That there's some new information that has been provided to Council today that we think it's important to have that assessed properly. So our recommendation to Council later the agenda is to actually defer this item. Now, given that these six questions all relate to the same agenda item, and they all ask all six questions ask a series of questions in relation to that planning permit, I feel that it's worthwhile saying that I can't foreshadow what Council may decide when that item comes up, but should Council be of a mind to defer this item later tonight, then the six questions that are in the questions for tonight in the open forum can well be considered by Council staff, and to the degree deemed appropriate, we can answer those questions in the report that we bring back at another time. Should Council decide they will still go ahead and consider this item tonight, I think these six questions, which have all been previously circulated to councillors and they've had a chance to read them, should be considered by councillors in their deliberation. But I don't believe it'd be appropriate for me to foreshadow or believe or even sort of assume to be able to answer these on your behalf, because a lot of these sort of talk about how you consider this and how you consider that, and I don't feel like I should foreshadow how you would take those on board, other than to say in this answer, you've got the information in hand. Council staff believe you've got all the information you need to consider the item when it comes up, and I don't think I can answer these in the open forum. Now, can I give that same answer for all six questions that may be asked in the open forum?
I'll ask the questions to the meeting still. So I'll continue with question 2. Noting that that's the response from the organisation. With the environmental assessment that forms part of this application being assessed and reported on by the required third parties, being NECMA, GMW, NEW and DELP, which is now DECA, responding without objection, subject to conditions, and also by council's environmental health team as being acceptable, does council consider current and recent home constructions in the immediate area downstream of 9 Mile Creek as comparable environmental assessments? Question 3. With this application for the parcel of land forming lot 1 on 1,550 square metres within the settlement area of the planning scheme, does council draw comparisons to other recent new building approvals within the Stanley Planning Scheme settlement area for 9 Ration Hill Road, 2628 Myrtleford Road, 40 to 50 Mount Stanley Road, 63 Mount Stanley Road, 6 Little Scotland Road? I'll now go to the second set of questions from Leonie Williams. Leonie, you're in the gallery. Question 1, Lower 9 Mile Road, Stanley. With the ongoing discussions and recent on-site positive meeting between the CFA and the applicants with their assistant, Shannon O'Brien from Habitat Planning, whereby a resolve was reached, does council seek to defer the outcome of the meeting to allow time to include the response from the CFA as part of their decision-making process? Question 2. With the planning report that uses examples of other planning applications that were refused by other councils and VCAT, the report addressing these applications shows important aspects were not disclosed in this report. How does council make a determination when there is an absence of important information when being presented as comparable? Question 3. Why would council planning report to councillors for the purpose of this hearing not use more relevant VCAT comparables relating to this application in the report that are within Indigo planning scheme, such as Mueller versus Indigo Shire Council 2010 VCAT 1871 or Gordon v Indigo SC 2013 VCAT 1829? So as the CEO mentioned, we've read your questions into the meeting. That item will appear later in the agenda. And those are all the responses to the open forum questions. Those are all the questions that we received for open forum tonight. So now we'll move to community and council achievements. Do any of the councillors want to note a community and council achievement? Councillor Croucher.
Yes, I'd just like to mention the successful milk run, which was held at the Huon Reserve on Sunday, April the 30th. With over 350 competitors, the fun run followed the rail trail across the Sandy Creek Bridge, transcending across the Hume Weir, all of this in the Indigo Shire. Our own Mayor, Councillor Sophie Price, started the event while the Wodonga City Band entertained the runners as they crossed the bridge. The event was blessed by a number of sponsors, and all proceeds from the day will go to Adeline, a 2-year-old girl in our district who suffered brain injury during birth and requires vital stem cell treatment from overseas.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Does anybody else have a community and council achievement? We'll move on to condolences. Councillor Goldsworthy, you have a condolence?
I'd like to acknowledge the passing of past councillor Graham Herman Gallus on the 9th of April 2023. Graham was elected to the United Shire of Beechworth between 1987 and 91, was president from 90 to 91. He was born on the Mornington Peninsula in 1938 and arrived in Beechworth in 1981. After purchasing the taxi service, he went into real estate and is very well known locally for that. He was involved in the Beechworth community and in resurrecting the promotion council with some other business owners. He distributed town brochures throughout Victoria. Of recent times, you would have seen Graham Gallus walking his small dog, and he lived in High Street, and he was a very well-known resident.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsworthy. Would you like a letter of condolence under seal?
That would be terrific if that could be sent to his family.
So you'll move that motion and
Absolutely.
Councillor Shepherd would second that motion. Are all councillors in favour? Carried unanimously. Item number 8 is confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. The recommendation is that the following minutes be confirmed. 1, minutes of the council meeting held on 18 April 2023 as published on council's website. And 2, confidential minutes of the council meeting held on 18 April 2023 as provided to councillors under separate cover. Do I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Croucher. Would you like to speak to the motion? Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? All those in favour? Carried. And item 9 is business arising from the previous minutes. There are no reports. Item 10 is petitions and there are none. At this point in time, we arrive at 11 planning and corporate services, but I hope that I might get a motion from one of the councillors to bring forward item 11.5 to be dealt with, given that we've got people in the gallery. So we need a resolution of council to do that. Councillor Gaffney, you'd like to move a motion that we bring forward item 11.5 to deal with the planning permit PP 220008 Lower 9 Mile Road, Stanley.
Yes, I would, Madam Mayor.
Would someone like to second that? Councillor Shepherd seconds. Are all the councillors in favour? Carried. I'll give you some time to move to that item in the agenda, item 11.5.
The preamble.
Sorry, go councillor.
Preamble is that some new information has been provided to council this afternoon that may be important in the assessment of this application. It is appropriate for council to allow time to review this information. I'd like to move a resolution that council defers item 11.5 to allow time for staff to consider the new information provided by the applicant.
Councillor Gaffney has moved that motion. Is somebody happy to second that motion? Councillor Shepherd. We'll now vote on that motion. All councillors in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, we'll now return to item 11.1, which is the April finance report. The recommendation is that council accepts the year-to-date April finance report, noting the progress against council's Q2 forecast. I have somebody to move that motion. Moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Croucher. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Yes, I'd just like to make one observation that within the body of the report in the discussion, it should read 1.85 million in deficit. And that relates to the fact that we are a bit more than $500,000 more favourable in our deficit than what we were. By and large, we are still on track. We've got a couple of months to run. Our capital works, as you can see on page 14, is running at about 9.3 million, which is equivalent to last year. Hopefully, with the next couple of months, if we get some fine weather, we'll finish up our capital works and our budget will still be reasonably balanced.
Councillor Croucher, would you like to speak?
Yes, against the council Q2 forecast, I can see the end of April, the bottom line financial position is favourable. And furthermore, with only 3 months left at the end of the financial year, they expect that this position of favourability will continue.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Would you like to sum up, Councillor Goldsworthy? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.2 is the draft council plan 2021 to 2025 year 3. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 endorses the updated draft council plan 2021 to 2025 year 3, noting adjustments to the phasing and rewording of some actions, and number 2 places it on public exhibition for 21 days from the 17th of May 2023 and invites submissions. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Well, by and large, this is the last hurrah for this council, because we'll get to see the achievements or the outcomes from this council plan. Come next year, it'll be a little bit more difficult unless you're re-elected. Hopefully, well, we know that there was a very strong process going into the development of this plan, and all going well, it'll be delivered in full for what we hope. There have been some minor alterations, but by and large, it remains a very solid plan with community support.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak?
Yeah, just like to acknowledge Councillor Goldworthy's comments and support them. And this is just an acknowledgement really of the plan that councillors came up with when they started, and accepting that some of those things had to be changed along the way. but it's still moving forward and it does have a lot of support from the community. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to sum up? No? I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.3 is the 2023-24 draft budget. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council 1 endorses the attached documents for public exhibition. A, the 2023-24 draft budget for the purposes of Section 94 of the Local Government Act 2020, and B, the 2023-24 draft 10-year financial plan, and C, the 2023-24 draft revenue and rating plan, and D, the 2023-24 draft operating income and expense by service, and 2, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to give public notice of the preparation of the draft budget in accordance with Section 96(2) of the Local Government Act 2020, and 3, places the endorsed documents on public exhibition for a period of 21 days from 17th of May 2023 to 6th of June 2023, and 4, invites any person wishing to provide feedback on the exhibited documents to do so prior to the 5 p.m. the 6th of June 2023, and 5, considers a recommendation to adopt the 2023-24 budget at the June ordinary meeting of Council on 27 June 2023. Do I have somebody to move that?
That's right, Madam Mayor. I would like to make an amendment and add one more point to this recommendation.
So, Councillor, you're adding a 6th point to the recommendation?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
And what is that point, 6th point?
That Council requests the CEO to meet with Victoria Police Local Area Command and providers of CCTV and prepare a report for Council on the viability of Council purchasing CCTVs for the safety of our communities across the Shire.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Tyson, Councillor Gaffney.
Without going into detail, last Monday morning there was a small crime wave in Beechworth which had over 20 buildings broken into, some cars stolen and theft from cars. Some was covered by CCTV by private providers, but it would be, the community would like a much bigger coverage of the CCTV, in particular to act as a deterrent for offenders coming from outside the Shire to cause trouble in the Shire.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
Many of our rural communities are experiencing unfavourable behaviour, thefts, robberies from people, and the ability of council to be able to provide CCTV coverage in hotspots around their communities would be an added bonus to Victoria Police and property owners.
Would anybody else like to speak to the budget? Councillor, this is the motion. This is
The motion, yeah.
Yep.
To the motion, yeah. I just would like to ask a question.
Sorry, Councillor Shepherd, can I just clarify? The motion that has been moved is all of those items plus your item 6. That's the entire motion. There was no motion that had been moved. You moved the entire recommendation plus your item. That is the motion on the table.
As by way of process, could I forecast that if this motion is defeated, that I'll put up a subsequent motion with just 1 to 5, 1 through to 5, so that if this is defeated, we still discuss the budget.
Okay. Councillor Shepherd. To speak to the draft budget, which includes all of those items.
Yeah, I
1 to
wish to
5.
speak to item 6 on the draft
It's
budget.
the entire motion.
Yeah, so that's I just wanted to ask about, I just want to ask a question. So why have you added this to the budget? Why wouldn't you have this as a general business discussion that you attended a meeting? And it would be good to get a report around crime and speak to the police and look into whether it's worth us doing CCTV.
This This matter was raised last Friday, so it's an urgent business with a meeting of council and the local safety committee, which had Victoria Police members. A number of crimes were discussed, which I won't go into detail here, but it was advocated that CCTV would certainly be a deterrent and would help in the solution of crime. The reason it's in the budget is it may, when this draft comes back as a final copy, it might mean that there'll be extra issues involved in that budget. That's why it's not in general business. That's why it is. And a notice of motion couldn't be called because it's out of time. And I discussed it with the CEO today, and he had no adverse comments about it whatsoever. Feel free to vote against it if you'd like to.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to continue to?
Yeah,
speak
well,
to the budget?
I have another question I'm going to ask is if we are doing CCTV and Emma, you were concerned about our regional, like our rural areas. I'm not sure where will those CCTV cameras go if we're talking about farming areas. How do we fund farming areas for CCTV? Yep.
Yeah, these are basically removable. They're normally battery charged so that they can be put on trees, put on buildings and removed, have the video footage recorded and then replaced at any point around the Shire.
And how will we know that this is going to be a deterrent to this, to crime? I'm really interested in a report on it, but how are we going to know from just tonight that to add to vote yes for this, that it's going to be deterrent?
Many councils throughout the state of Victoria and probably Australia have CCTV to assist police in solving crime and as a deterrent to criminals. Most towns don't have 24-hour coverage, and there's a lot of outside villains coming into Indigo Shire to commit crime, and this would be a major uptake for the local area command. It was discussed at the local safety committee last Friday.
So,
Could I just seek some clarity? So are you thinking that it's like a game camera that would fit on a tree or a pole, or are you thinking that it needs to be something that's fully fixed and monitors all traffic coming in and out on various locations within a shire?
The cameras would be portable so that if there was a hotspot for crime, they could be moved there, as has happened in Rutherglen and in Chiltern and in Beechworth and I'm sure most areas of the Shire. But that would be where they were placed would be an issue for Victoria Police, not for Indigo Shire Council. We would just be assisting in the safety of our community, which to me is paramount.
Just a further question for the CEO. What sort of time frame would you need to have your staff fully examine the issue of fixing CCTV?
Through you, Madam Chair. I note that the intent of the extra clause in the recommendation was aimed at trying to get a response back in time for the June budget, I assume. So that allows us about 3 or 4 weeks. I don't think it's unreasonable that we could come back with some sort of report within the time we have available. So we would bring what we could at that time. Then councillors could judge at that time whether you thought that was comprehensive enough for a decision or whether you might defer it to another time. But I'm comfortable, it's not an unreasonable request, and we'll do what we can to bring some sort of a report by then. It may or may not be the most comprehensive report that's ever been written, but we would do what we could in the available time.
I have a question. So if I could just ask the finance director, I'm very aware this is a very tight budget because we've been working on it for the last 5 months. So what sort of amount of money would there be available for CCTV in the budget at the moment?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. At the moment, there's no provision in the budget for CCTV. This is something that is new tonight. So we've delivered a balanced budget that doesn't include that. Subject to a report that would come back, there's things that the council could consider, but it's a little bit difficult to know what that might be until we see the report.
So is there any money for anything else for this year's budget, for this next financial year's budget?
The current the draft budget has been balanced, and so there's no extra money spare for any other projects.
Okay, do any other councillors have any questions about that? Yep, Councillor Croucher.
Just by the discussion around here, to me, I would like some sort of a report on this sort of thing as well. My only concern is I didn't think it fitted in with as an item number 6 in the draft budget, but I would be very interested in some sort of report about this because I don't know much about CCTV and all that sort of thing, but it's a fairly tight frame, isn't it, that's coming up.
And Councillor Croucher, before you finish your speaking, did you want to say anything about the budget? Because we are still speaking to the budget item as well.
No, I'm quite happy with the first 5 points. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to speak to the item?
I'd like to speak to the budget, and look, I'm hopeful that that this point 6 will be defeated and that we'll consider the budget in its entirety as a forecast between 1 and 5. What I'd like to say specifically into point 6 is, where would the CCTV be placed? Is it in the centre of town or at our entrances? How many entrances to a town would be covered? What will it possibly capture? It might see a car driving by, most likely with stolen plates, which is the norm. And it might capture them coming into town, it might capture them leaving, but that's all. It's not going to be preventative. All it's going to do is show a time that they arrived and left. The crimes will still be committed if in fact they're going to commit crimes. And how do you determine where it's going to be? If it's portable, which town do you put it in? We have a number of centres within our shire, and we only know if it's been hit by certain crimes after the event, not during it. So the chances of actually having something that's usable is very slim. And if it's portable, really that lends itself to vandalism and theft as well. If it's large, then it can be seen, and others can take alternative routes around, like we know with all of our towns. There's multiple places you can get into and out of them. A lot of CCTV, you see offenders with hoodies on and they drive with caps. So the actual benefit is very negligible and potentially at significant costs. The reason why you don't see it in Wodonga is because of the cost. So Albury have taken it up because they have a lot more problems within their streets and that sort of thing, but that's not what we're looking at here. So a lot of the crimes that were committed that have been spoken about were remote from the CBD of our towns. So for that reason, I advise all of us to vote against the motion as it stands, and with the forecast motion coming back to us as a 1 to 5, we should support that.
Say something else? No?
I did advise you that you were speaking to the budget as well, so I'll keep to that. Councillor Shepherd or Councillor Horn, do you wish to speak to the draft budget with the addition of item 6?
Sorry. I would like to speak to both of these as separate items. Yes. But I would, I don't know how we get around it.
Point of order,
But
Madam Mayor, but if you wanted to speak to one part of this, you could, and then you could speak to the rest of it.
Councillor Gaffney, as I said, there was no motion on the table. When I asked if someone would like to put the motion, you said with the addition of item 6. So the motion that was put on the table included item 6. There was no motion before that.
So councillor Goldsworthy only spoke to item 6, so he's had his speak on this, on the
Yes.
draft budget. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Horn, you're speaking to the draft budget with the inclusion of item 6 as councillor Gaffney has proposed.
There's no way we can separate them
No.
out.
Just speak in two separate moments.
I don't believe that's quite correct because she could speak to whatever point she wanted to on this. And if this motion as it stands is defeated, we'll then re-speak about the budget and she'll be able to speak to
Sorry.
the budget.
Yes, if you are, you can make the assumption that this might be lost, and so you can only speak to item 6, and then assume that you might be able to speak to the budget if this item is lost and the motion is put as an alternative afterwards. But that's up to you. So you can speak to just item 6 now if you like.
Well, I think that's a really tricky thing to do. I don't know what to do, quite frankly.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Horn, I'll give you some time.
I'm quite annoyed that the budget, which is a very, it's a great budget that we put a lot of work into, that Sharon has stepped up and gone into as the acting finance manager and worked really hard. And 315 community members have engaged with us and given us their feedback. I think this is what we should be talking about at the moment. And so other people have lost the opportunity by speaking, I suppose, on item 6. But it's we've had to, of course, balance the economic factors that everybody in the Shire will be absolutely aware of, that we've got a 7.8% CPI and we have been asked to keep a cap on our rates at 3.5%. So the gap between those two figures means that we, especially in our capital works area, are paying above and beyond what in a couple of months it costs us more. So we've had to be really quite tight. It's not going to make any difference to how we deliver this budget. We've got a great team at Indigo Shire, and we've got a great capital works budget with some amazing figures: $1.8 million to upgrade rural roads, $1.4 million for a new bridge on Indigo Creek Road, $700,000 to improve urban and rural drains. And we know we've got a lot of feedback about drainage, and if people go through the draft budget, they will see the amount of money we're spending on drains and where we're working on that drainage. $350,000 to upgrade the female change rooms at Barclay Park, $170,000 to progress the Kiwa River Community Park improvements, $100,000 for toilet improvements. And of course, in the budget, we've also, we're going to be doing our toilet strategy, which is one of our last sort of strategic actions for our 4-year plan. $300,000 towards construction of pump tracks at Tangambalanga and Waganya. Of course, the $5.1 million for the Rutherglen Wine Walk Cycle Trail, which is fully granted. And it's one of our biggest capital work budgets ever. There's a proposed $20 million spend, including $8 million that we're going to carry forward. So tight budget, very well considered by the community, by the responses in the pre-budget discussion. And I think we should be very proud of what we're considering here at the moment. I think, congratulations to the finance department for the great work you've done in being able to balance it in a very difficult time.
Councillors, before we go any further, the CEO has just pointed out that item 58E of our governance rules says that no councillor may speak more than once on the same motion or amendment unless given leave to do so by the chairperson. Because of the confusion around this item and whether it was including item 6, I will exercise that tonight so that you might be able to speak if you haven't been able to speak to the budget. So Councillor Horn, if you'd like to speak about item 6 and the budget, will allow you to do so. Councillor Tyson, you'd like to speak again to the budget?
Yeah, look, it's been a very challenging year for our finance guys here at Indigo Shire. They've managed to deliver a balanced budget with no variations other than what's been handed to us by the state government. We should reflect on what's happening in neighbouring shires where they're asking for increases of up to 74%. Once again, we've delivered and are going to continue to deliver financially for our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Croucher, would you like to speak to the budget?
I'm quite happy with I echo exactly what Councillor Tyson said.
Great. Councillor Horn? You need to turn your microphone on.
I think that this term of council will become known as the COVID Council. The question we need to ask ourselves is how we'll be judged by future generations. The fires, the floods, the COVIDisation of our economy has presented us with a whole new ballgame. And I believe we need to find a new pathway. I don't believe we should be moving forward with plans that predate the perfect storm which continues to batter us. As I subscribe to the ideals of participatory governance, it's balance and responsiveness and achieving the best possible outcomes for the greatest number of people that I'm looking for. I'm hearing loud and clear messaging that those who have built our communities and those who now call this place home want us to get the fundamentals, the roads, the drainage and the footpaths right. And I doubt that those who are thinking about how the next season, fire season or flood may impact their families, or perhaps how the COVIDisation of our economy will continue to impede every facet of our social or civic lives. I doubt if they'll be pleased with this document. Community expectations for equity of spend across all sectors, demographics and locations are not unrealistic and should be the not negotiables that underpin all of our decision making. I perceive that our residents, ratepayers and business owners, those of us who are still here when all the tourists go home, are looking for a better deal and more inclusive and consensus-oriented decision making. This is borne out by the high numbers of participants in our second pre-budget survey. Worryingly, the results of which have not been made publicly available at this time. So I believe it's now over to our community members, particularly the survey respondents, who are to be thanked for their time and very considerable effort to articulate their wishes to review this draft budget and see if it aligns with the statement in the annual report that this is a customer-focused and future-ready Shire. Thank you.
Given the confusion within the debate, I just make some comments that I think we typically make, which is we have developed this budget. This is our budget now as it comes to us tonight, and we hand it back over to the community now to give our feedback. So this is what the organisation led by the councillors says is a reasonable budget. That's what's here before you tonight. And as I say, it's now for the community to give feedback to say, over and above the pre-budget survey feedback that we've already had, over above all of the engagement, where are the bits that we got wrong? Are there any? Point them out to us and we can adjust before the final budget. I think everyone's had opportunity to speak now, predominantly to the budget and in some parts to item 6. I'll now go back to the mover of the motion, Councillor Gaffney, to sum up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In general, I find this a very good budget. No rate cap variation. Council rates to be increased in line with the government's rate cap of 3.5%. Cash to align with the long-term financial plan expectations. New borrowings only considered for long-term infrastructure. Maintain a level of self-sourced expenditure on roads. Capital renewal expenditure aligned with council's renewal needs. Total capital expenditure greater than total depreciation. Net cost to council to be stable. There's a lot of people doing it tough and they're certainly hurting financially. And I think that there's aspects where council could tighten its belt. The tourism budget, the visitor experience and museums is $1.178 million. Tourism development's another $561,000. So that's a total of $1.739 million on tourism. The Burke Museum for income was $4,364, but its expenses were $293,618. I don't think things can keep going at that rate. During the same period, the Chiltern Athenaeum had a net debt of $720 and the Yakandanda Museum of $1,500. The Beechworth Visitor Information Centre made a net loss of $298,000. The Rutherglen Visitor Information Centre was only $125,000. Income for Rutherglen was $108,410, whereas Beechworth was only $76,250. I look forward to community feedback. Just in relation to comments made by Councillor Goldsworthy, he is wrong. There are many, many crimes that have been solved by the strategic placing of closed circuit television. For him to sit there and say that it's not is just plain wrong. And I thought he would know better. A lot of the crimes that have been solved by CCTV have been very serious crimes over large periods of time.
Okay. I'll now put it to the vote. It's the item is the 2023-24 draft budget. It's going out for public exhibition with the inclusion of Councillor Gaffney's item 6. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? For the record, all those in favour was Councillor, raise your hand, Councillor Tyson, Croucher, Gaffney. Those against, Councillor Horn, Goldsworthy, Shepherd, Price. Councillor Goldsworthy, you foreshadowed.
Yes, as foreshadowed, I'd like to remove the original recommendation, which is items 1 through to 5.
So you're moving the item, the recommendation as it was in the papers.
That's correct.
So that's moved by Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Goldsworthy.
A lot of councillors have already spoken positively about the budget, and I agree with it. Sharon Phillips is to be congratulated for the effort that she's put into it, along with our esteemed Director for Planning and Finance, Pinkerton. Well done. You managed to get it through, and all those budget managers that made the submissions. It is a tight budget. We are doing it on a shoestring at the moment. There's not a lot of fat in the system, and yeah, there will be a lot of good outcomes for the council plan in the finances that are provided through this budget. So for that reason, I commend it to the council.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the budget? No one? Councillor Shepherd, back to you.
I think I've said a lot. I've said quite a bit of a ramble about the budget when I was left hanging here. But I also, if I could also thank Mel Collis and her team for the great work that they do in getting all this to us in a succinct and clear way, and then we'll get it out to the community. And they're the ones that have been asking the community for their feedback, getting it to us so that we're able to read it and able to and then they come back to us with how that's fitting in with graphs and these sort of documents that the media and the community can see tomorrow. So there's a lot of work through quite a few different departments in making this budget work. So yeah, congratulations to all. And I hope that the community feel confident when they read it, that they can hear their voices in it.
Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, just to take a page out of a document that has been produced by the communications area, $4 million on waste management, close to $1 million on parks and gardens, 383,000 on trees and maintenance, 1.1 on creative communities. We're really responding to what the community wanted. If you look at the $17.6 million budget, there's millions to be spent on roads, footpaths and drainage. So well done all.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote. This is the item as it was in the paper, in the budget, council papers that you've got in front of you. It's the 2023-24 draft budget with the recommendation with items 1 through to 5. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. So do we need that for the record, CEO? Raise your hands. All those in favour? Councillor Goldsworthy, Shepherd, Price, Croucher, Tysell. Those against? Councillor Horn, Gaffney. The motion is carried. Item 11.4 is planning permit application PP 220211, 454 Sandy Creek Road, Sandy Creek. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council, having caused notice of planning application PP 220211 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, and having considered all matters under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, determines to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a planning permit or application PP 220211 for the use and development of a dwelling on Crown Allotment A4 Section 6 Parish of Tangamalanga for the following reasons. There's 3 reasons. They're quite lengthy paragraphs. I won't read those out. Do I have someone who would like to move that motion? Moved Councillor Tysell, seconded Councillor Goldsworthy. Councillor Tysell.
Yeah, unfortunately for this application, it doesn't meet the guidelines that are currently in place. One of the main ones being a viable agricultural business. And I think one of the bigger things I'd like to talk to is people buying land within our shire where the advert reads subject to council approval. I mean, the land value to this has gone up considerably with that subject to council approval slogan on it. And I think it's something that really should be rubbed out of real estate agents and other selling capacity. Thank you.
Councillor Goldsworthy, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I've always been a firm advocate that we try and retain farming land for farmers, and this is an example of that. It's an unfortunate situation that the applicant finds themselves in, but ultimately this land should remain for those that want a legitimate farming business.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Return to you, Councillor Tysell, to sum up.
Yeah, as I said, it's an unfortunate outcome for the applicant, but it is very important that we retain our agricultural land for agriculture. And for that reason, I think this plan will be unsuccessful. Thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour to refuse? Carried unanimously. Item 11.5 we've dealt with at the beginning of the agenda, so we move to item 11.6, planning permit application PP 180074 12 Kirby Flat Road, Yakandanda. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council refuses planning permit application PP 220088 at 12 Kirby Flat Road, Yakandanda for a roof over storage containers on the following grounds. Number one being failure to respond. The applicant has failed to respond to requests for further information required to assess the application in accordance with the requirements of the low density residential zone clause 32.03 Indigo Planning Scheme and the rural living zone clause 35.03 Indigo Planning Scheme. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Councillor Croucher, seconded by Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Croucher.
From my point of view, it's all in the recommendation, the failure to respond. The applicant has failed to respond to the request for further information required to assess the application in accordance with the requirement of low density residential zone. I think it's pretty clear in the recommendation.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak as seconder? No. I'll put the vote. All those in favour? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Gaffney, would you like to speak? You need to put your microphone on.
It would appear that the application has been abandoned.
Councillor Croucher, would you like to sum up? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 12 is Community and Economic Development. There are no reports. Item 13 is Infrastructure Services. Item 13.1 is a contract for flood rehabilitation works, Western Area. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that Council, one, conditional on the approval of funding from the Department of Justice and Community Safety for these works, awards contract number 22/6119 for flood rehabilitation works in the west of the Shire to Beechworth Excavations for the lump sum of $620,696 excluding GST. Two, authorises the CEO to sign the contract documents and affix the council's common seal, and three, notes that the additional flood rehabilitation works may be required to be undertaken by the same contractor, and authorises the CEO financial delegation to approve contract variations up to a total of 50% of the signed contract value. Do I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, this is in relation to the storm events that we had earlier in the year, and it's fantastic to see that a local company has been able to win the contract, and with that local knowledge, they will be able to get in and actually fix some of the damage that's been caused. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak?
I just, in terms of the 50% variation that we don't normally have in a contract, in terms of while they're out there working, if from the fixing the previous flood event, the next flood event occurred later, and if there are other things that come up that have not been seen and approved previously, we need to have the opportunity for those contractors to be able to work on that in particular. So, of course, we should get this funding back as part of our flood mitigation funding back eventually, but rather than them go away and have to come back again, it sounds like a good idea to keep them working where work needs to be done.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tyson, would you like to sum up? Oh, sorry, Councillor Horn.
I just had a question for our director, Ian Elliott. Ian, could you please talk to the item listed on page 73 under options about the drainage networks being restored to pre-flood condition?
Thank you. Look, I haven't got the page in front of me, but yeah, look, certainly your question is essentially about the restoration of works to the pre-flood condition. So it's the conditions of the funding that come through from the government is not to provide what they call betterment. If we want to do betterment and improve things, and from time to time that's the right outcome, then that's an additional cost on council. The fully funded works is to restore things that have been damaged back to their pre-existing condition. And for the most part, what we're talking about here is rural roads, a lot of gravel roads, open table drains, and And so for the most part, we're not looking at betterment, we're looking just to get them back and functioning in normal times.
Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tyson, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, hopefully after tonight, the work can commence quickly and we can get on with removing some of the water around our towns. Thank you.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13.2 is contract for flood rehabilitation works eastern area. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council, one, conditional on the approval of funding from the Department of Justice and Community Safety for these works, awards contract number 22/6118 for flood rehabilitation works in the east of the Shire to Richardson Earthworks and Maintenance for the lump sum of 322,505 excluding GST. 2, authorises the CEO to sign the contract documents and affix the council's common seal. And 3, notes that additional flood rehabilitation works may be required to be undertaken by the same contractor, and authorises the CEO financial delegation to approve contract variations up to a total of 50% of the signed contract value. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Shepherd.
So exactly the same discussion as the previous, except we're talking about the eastern area, and we're splitting the tenders east and west because there's some urgency to work on both areas at the same time concurrently. Yep, rather than us giving it to the one tender. So that should be good. So thanks for that, Infrastructure Department.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Shepherd, would you like to sum up? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Councillor Croucher, did you put your hand up then? Carried unanimously. Item 13.3 is the April Capital Works report. The item is for information. The recommendation is that council notes the April Capital Works report and year-to-date progress in the delivery of the Capital Works program. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Croucher. Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak? Councillor Croucher, would you like to speak?
Oh, just to say, despite the challenges and hiccups provided by the shortage of delivery resources, increase in labour and material prices, progress is being shown, and 23-24 remains well and truly on track.
Would any other councillor like to speak? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14 is executive management, and item 14.1 is the advocacy action plan 2021 through to 2025 as at the 1st of May 2023. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council endorses the updated advocacy plan 2021 to 2025 as at 1st of May 2023. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Goldsworthy.
Over the years, we've had great success with our advocacy to federal and state government. This is a fairly succinct plan that demonstrates our commitment to the council plan and to trying to achieve for our community. It gives our politicians at both those levels something tangible to look at, and it's an attractive document that's been produced. So thank you to the Commerce Department for their work in this.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I'd just like to go through some of the following objectives from the advocacy plan. It's to increase levels of funding for infrastructure and services from other levels of government to help meet our community needs. And it's to keep our community informed about our advocacy activities through regular reporting. And I believe that this plan actually identifies some of the things that we've spoken earlier on tonight. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the advocacy action plan? Councillor Shepherd.
I'd just like to say I really like the column of status that's been added where councillors and the community can see where you've had the opportunities to speak to the different departments and different levels of government. So often we don't hear that. So it's great to see it. So yeah, appreciate that, Colin.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Croucher.
I'd just like to read the last sentence of the conclusion. I think it sums it up pretty well. The plan is a living document and reflects the items considered most relevant at this time, but they may be added or altered as needing on an ongoing basis. It's a very good sentence.
Thank you, Councillor Croucher. Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? I'll go back to you, Councillor Goldsworthy, to sum up. Nothing further. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.2 is the review of instruments of delegation. The item is for decision and the recommendation is almost a full page long. So I won't read that one out, councillors. Is somebody happy to move that recommendation? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Tyson. Councillor Shepherd.
So in February 23, a review of the instruments was commenced using the Reliance Delegations module. It incorporated 2 legislative updates. So these really are often updated because of new changes to legislation. So Maddox Delegations and Authorisation Service assists us with that. And the updates include legislative changes which were made on or after the 22nd of July 22. The changes in the attached document reflect amendments in legislation since this time, as well as changes to delegates to accommodate team workflows, the organisational structure change and updated role titles. And I think probably the main ones for us would be the planning area. Maybe if you'd be able to speak to us about those 2 changes, is that fine?
Director of Planning and Corporate Services.
Yeah, thank you. There's been a few minor changes made to the planning delegations. The major or the notable one is the inclusion of the ability for staff to refuse a permit under certain circumstances, and one of which is where a determining referral authority has refused the permit, and so in that situation, council has no option but to refuse it. So it does seem a bit of a waste to bring a report to council where your only real option is to refuse. And the other 2 parts relate more or less to applications that have been abandoned and are no longer active. And so again, there isn't enough information to approve a permit, and it does seem, again, a bit pointless to bring it to council. Notable that in the abandonment clause is a couple of timeframes and a couple of checks to make sure that we're going through an appropriate process if that's ever used.
Councillor Tyson, would you like to speak as seconder?
I believe that Councillor Shepherd has more than adequately covered this subject. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd, I'll go back to you to sum up. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.3 is Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Planning Environment Act 1987. The item is for decision in the exercise of powers conferred by Section 224 of the Local Government Act 1989 and the other legislation referred to in the attached instruments of appointment and authorisation. Indigo Shire Council resolves that 1, the member of council staff referred to in attachment 1 be appointed and authorised as set out in the instrument, and 2, the instrument in the attachment comes into force immediately upon resolution of council and is revoked on the date the officer ceases employment with council or until council determines to vary or revoke it. Do I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Shepherd. Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, it's great to see that we've got another addition to our planning department. I think we've actually now managed to fill it up, and it should be all good going forward for our communities again. Thank you.
Councillor Shepherd, do you wish to speak?
I'd like to welcome Eliza to the planning team, and yes, this instrument of appointment and authorisation means she can legally get on with her job.
Would anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Tyson, do you wish to sum up? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.4 is the advisory committee minutes. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council receives the attached unconfirmed meeting minutes for the following advisory committees and endorses the officer recommendations. The Finance Committee, B, Indigo Community Access Committee, and C, Indigo. Do I have someone to move that motion? Moved Councillor Croucher, seconded Councillor Goldsworthy. Councillor Croucher.
Nothing much to say, but it's always great to read what's going on in other committees throughout the Shire and so forth. And I note that these are here for noting anyway.
Councillor Goldsworthy, you don't wish to speak. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
I attended the Indigo meeting and we had two really good presentations on both the Chiltern Destination Play Space and the Chiltern Land Project. And these recommendations that came from the committee that Indigo support the process and project of the Chiltern Destination Play Space, and that Indigo support and endorse council's process and the intent of the Chiltern Land Project. And they look forward to seeing further action regarding cultural heritage and planning to ensure the sustainable future of this project. So it was a really good presentation, and they were really happy to be able to have an input.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Crouch, would you like to sum up? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.5 is informal meetings of councillor records. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of councillor records. Would somebody like to move that motion? Moved Councillor Tyson, seconded Councillor Croucher. Councillor Tyson, do you wish to speak? No. Councillor Croucher. Anybody else? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.6 is contracts awarded under CEO delegation for April 2023. The item is for information. Item 15, notices of motion. There are no reports. Item 16 is councillors' reports. Do any of the councillors wish to make a report? No. Item 16.1 is the Mayor's Diary for April. It's for information. And item 17 is the Decisions Register. CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is usually an update on our decisions taken in previous council meetings. Unfortunately, we had a computer glitch. The work was done, and our Annabelle's listening. I know she did the work to update the register for this meeting, but unfortunately, the computer said no, and it used the old decision register update. So, can I please table the updated document? A copy has been circulated to councils in the last couple of days. This is the same copy as that, and I ask that the minutes of the meeting record the new version of the update. So I'll table that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. So, councillors, you can see item 17.1 is the decisions register, and that's being tabled. Item 18 is general business. Does anybody have any general business for the council meeting? Councillor Goldsworthy.
I would ask that the CEO examine the efficacy of using a fixed or mobile CCTV system. And as a minimum, this examination should include the different types of CCTV, the storage requirements, the potential location of placement of the CCTV, the cost, the impact on the privacy of the public, and engage with the Wodonga Police Local Area Commander regarding the benefits of any proposed CCTV system.
Just a question on that, Madam Mayor. Seems very onerous to put that to the CEO without a time frame, and I'd like to see a copy of all of the things he's asking for.
And that'll be recorded in the minutes. Councillor Goldsworthy, did you want to add a time frame or at the CEO's discretion? Okay.
No, yes.
CEO, you've acknowledged that?
Yeah, I know, Madam Mayor, the government's rules say that I could just accept that role without a resolution if I thought it was reasonable. I think it's a reasonable request, but I do think that that will take a bit of time. So if I can have an open-ended timeline for that, I'll get back in due course. Thank you. Happy to accept that, Madam Mayor.
I'd like to raise an item of general business to ask the Director of Infrastructure Services, Ian Ellett, to provide an update on the status of the Beechworth Wodonga Road, including the Reeds Way diversion. Where are we up to? What has Regional Roads Victoria been telling us about the progress that they're making? We're hearing lots from the community, lots of concern, lots of interest around this, and wanting to know if it's still moving along and if there's a completion date in sight.
Yeah, look, pardon me, thank you for the question. Look, I've kept in close contact with Regional Roads Victoria. As of today, they feel they're very close to getting a report. I know they've had a consultant with some expertise in stone arch culvert, so the culvert over the Rising Sun Creek that's of concern. They were expecting that report, around about now. So this morning they said they were hoping to even have it by the end of the day or tomorrow. I don't imagine the report will immediately then result in a time frame they can provide absolute clarity to the community, but it would certainly give them a sense of the recommended works, and then they would just need to set their minds to how they go about those, how they get a contractor, how long that would take. So look, I think we're really close from hearing from Regional Roads Victoria about what the next steps and timing is. They certainly, from all of my conversations, have really clear mandate that it's an absolute priority, and they recognise that the community is really living with the uncertainty of how long this might drag on, and as people think about having to use Reeds Way into the winter months and the short nights, it's certainly a challenge at night. People recognise that. So look, hopefully some news is pretty close. I suppose just on that route, so council did undertake a little bit of topping up the shoulders on Reeds Way this week. So that was probably the road's holding up really well, but the edges were a concern, and particularly I think at night if you meet another vehicle, you slow down, you move close to the edge of the road. There were some drop offs. So council has done some work this week to tidy those up, and Reeds Way itself is looking pretty good.
Thank you, Director. Do any other councillors have any items for general business of the meeting? Oh, Councillor Horn.
I'd just like to ask a general question. With the coronation of King Charles, are there plans underway to replace the photographs of the Queen?
CEO.
Through you, Madam Chair, we have been monitoring that situation very closely. So we've been advised the right protocol is that Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II remains up on the wall until there is an official post-coronation portrait taken of His Majesty King Charles. So we're still waiting for that official post-coronation photo image to be available, at which point then Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II will be replaced.
Councillor Goldsworthy, another item of general business?
Yes, it's Ida Hobbit Day tomorrow. So there's a celebration tomorrow at 10:30 at the Old Courthouse in Beechworth. So I would encourage anyone to get along and support that. And we'll be hearing from yourself and other speakers. And to all those mothers, congratulations on Mother's Day.
It's a lot of different things this week. It's also Volunteers Week. So I think it's appropriate that we recognise that across our shire, we've got really high rates of volunteerism. And they're really an additional resource to council, to all of our different community groups. We really value everything that they put into our communities. And I know there's a number of celebrations being held across the shire over the course of this week. Chiltern Tourism held a lunch on Monday, and the shire is holding an afternoon tea this week as well. So yeah, we really say thank you, because we would need a lot more paid resources if we had to fill the shoes of all the volunteers that it requires to keep all of our different assets and groups and all of those different things going within the Shire. So I hope that all of those people get the thanks that they deserve across the course of this week. Do any other councillors have any general business? Okay, so we'll now move into confidential. So section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020 states a council or delegated committee must keep a meeting open to the public unless the council or delegated committee considers it necessary to close the meeting to the public because a circumstance specified in subsection 2 applies. The circumstances are A, B, and C. This matter is considered to be confidential as it deals with personal information, being information which, if released, would result in the unreasonable disclosure of information about any person and their personal affairs. So I'll get a recommendation from council to go into confidential. So Councillor Goldsworthy, you'd move that the council meeting be closed to the public in accordance with section 66 of the Local Government Act, and a seconder for that motion, Councillor Horn. All those in favour? Carried. We'll now move into confidential. We've now moved out of confidential, and I'd make a statement about the item that was considered in confidential, that council has approved a heritage loan for $20,000 in the Rutherglen area. Now we will close the meeting. The next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, the 27th of June, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.